Why are SHAIR.care's 10 principles so fundamental for an easy, happy, and fulfilling life? Come and explore the 10 principles, and I'll share some of my failings and successes with each.
Welcome to SHAIR.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. SHAIR.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning SHAIR.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to an On the Couch episode of the SHAIR.care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued, and heard gives you a foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everyone. Because in today's world, it's in your own selfish best interest to help others. Today, I'm going to go through SHAIR.care's 10 principles, and these are the principles on which SHAIR.care is built. From the very beginning, its foundation was these 10 principles. Why 10? It seemed to cover off all the key things that made a strong, healthy, and inspiring relationship, which is what SHAIR.care is about. Is it providing those guiding principles, or providing an ability for you to have strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships in your life. And these 10 principles seem to cover off all the aspects that are needed for that to happen. So we'll start with the first one, and the first one is responsibility. You are responsible for your own actions. And that links to an earlier podcast that we did where we talked about what are the predictors of success. And the predictors of success, one of those predictors is believing that you have control over your life and its direction. And this is when I'm going to refer to the quote from Sophocles, which he says, It is a painful thing to look at your own trouble and know that you yourself and no one else has made it. And this is a real struggle that is probably part of the human condition, that we don't want to accept that responsibility, that a lot of things that happen is because of our own behavior or how we've responded. And the reason why personal responsibility is number one is it gives you the ability to take charge over the things that you have control over. Now, there are things that are going to happen in life that are outside of your control, and that's accepted. That happens, and sometimes some really bad stuff happens. The one thing that you do have control over, and you always have your control over, is your ability to choose your response to what happens. And the reason why personal responsibility and that you are responsible for your own actions is the principle. So you're not responsible for things that happen in life. Certainly things happen outside of your control, but you are responsible for your own actions, and you have the ability in any given circumstance to choose that. And the reason why we have this as a principle is that it puts you in control. When something happens, you're not a victim that is just stuck there. You can actually do something about it. If you apply for a job and you don't get the job, I've talked about that in other podcasts where I've applied for job that I desperately wanted, and I didn't get it. So I applied for other jobs, and as it turned out, in one particular example that I've referred to, I actually got a better job than the company that I wanted to work with, because the company that I originally wanted to work with turned out to be dodgy and not very good, and I would have ended up with that reputation. And the company that I did ending up getting a job with was wonderful. And this is where it puts you in control. So you go, well, okay, that didn't happen. What I was wanting to achieve didn't happen. What can I do now? What action can I take? It also helps, taking personal responsibility helps improve your own self-worth and security, because you know that no matter what happens, you can address it. And that's something that's given me, when I look back at my life, certainly when I was younger, there was many things that I just kind of accepted that, that's the way it is, and I had no control over it, and yeah, I was just stuck. And that's quite demoralizing, to feel that you are stuck or feel that you are out of control. And this, there's lots of research on this as to do with, people, linked to with or people feeling depressed, feeling sad when they don't have control over what's going on in their life. And when you recognize that you have control, in the sense of you control how you react, that gives you tremendous power. Circumstances might not be favorable, but having that ability to act gives you tremendous strength and tremendous belief in yourself. I know, certainly from my perspective, now there is no circumstance that happens where I um, feel out of control, or I feel oppressed, so to speak, because I always have an ability. I believe I have the ability to actually take some action, whatever it is. And sometimes that action is walking away. It's just, I can remove myself from the situation. Your ability, another reason for having, adopting this principle, is that your abilities to succeed increases significantly. And a lot of the times, coming back to that, the job I was talking about where I lost the job, I mean, if I had have said, oh, my life sucks and I'm hopeless and I can't do anything with that, I would have been stuck. I would have, but instead, I had a belief that I will just try again, and that's what I did. So I took another action. I applied for another job, and so that, immediately shifting to that. Back then, I felt a bit depressed about it for a while, and sad about it, and moped about it. Today, when something doesn't go my way, I'm immediately thinking, it just happens. I've trained my habits are unconscious actions. So I've trained myself to, as soon as something doesn't happen the way I'm expecting, what can I do next? What can I do now? And so that really increases my chance of success, because I can immediately take another action. And that's why it's important to know that you are responsible for your own actions. And as soon as something doesn't go your way, well, what can you do next? And that links to outcomes are achieved much quicker as well, because instead of wandering around going, oh, this sucks, or I can't achieve this, you actually, you immediately take another action, and that it's the action, the next step, the next step, and the next step, until you get what you want, is how quickly you'll get there. And so the time, if you can reduce the time between, getting information, something happening, and you then taking the next action that you need to move closer, that would significantly reduce, or can significantly reduce, the time to get what you want. So that there are reasons for having, an attitude of that you're responsible for your own actions. How do you do that? Well, I said, when I was younger, I didn't have that approach. Like anything, building a new habit is just repeating it over and over again. So you remind yourself that you are free to choose. And that's why I always ask the question, rather than asking what do I want, or asking someone what do they want, I ask what do you choose, because at a core it reminds you that you have a choice, that you choose. So saying, what do I choose? Well, I have a choice, actually. I choose this. So reminding yourself that you choose. Again, building that habit. Think about what's important to you. Again, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? Having that future focus. Looking in the past is not a great way to succeed. And so reminding yourself about what's important to you helps you then look forward and go, okay, what do I choose? And how can I do that? And look for a resolution that helps you to achieve what's important. This is another way to take that responsibility, that you are responsible for your actions. So you go, well, I'm looking for a solution. That also helps you move forward, because a lot of times we dwell on the problem and we're going, oh no, this happened and that happened, and it's all, effectively it's excuses, saying, all these are reasons why I'm not doing it today. But rather than that, you go, well, what's the solution? What do I need to do to overcome this obstacle? Those kind of questions are empowering. And there's a whole raft of information on questions and the right questions to ask. They open doors. And then the other thing is to do that action, just to remind yourself, I'm responsible for my actions. So in this circumstance, I can choose. I can sit down and mope, or I can get up and do something, or I can go for a quiet walk to relax, and then I can do something. Um, and I think, when other examples of that, you're responsible for your own actions. A long time ago, I was 19, and I was in Perth. I was driving along the river, and I didn't see that the cars had stopped in front of me, and I drove straight into the back of the first car, which had a concertina effect, and I totaled 4 cars. The thing with that made it worse is I wasn't insured. So I had a huge, eventually the insurance companies, the other people chased me, and I had this $60,000 debt, which, going back then, that's over 20, nearly 30 years ago. It was over 30 years ago, actually. And I'm a lot older than I look. So the insurance companies were chasing me. Now, when you think back at that now, you go, well, that's terrible. And it was a really terrible experience. And I wasn't thinking that way then. But I look at it and go, well, I'm responsible more for my own actions. Well, I was responsible. I didn't have insurance. That was my choice. It's not the world's fault. And so I accepted that and then moved forward and worked towards resolving it. Now, I didn't approach it quite the way I would now because I have a lot more knowledge about choosing my actions. And of course, now I would choose to be insured. So that's a big difference. But when unfortunate situations happen, and what it did too, I mean, the approach, because I was by myself, so I didn't have family around me. And I had to deal with all by myself. And what that did is, because I had to deal with it, I actually learnt things that I probably wouldn't have learnt throughout that experience. Some might say that's finding the positive in the negative. I didn't consciously do that at the time. It was just a circumstance that I had to deal with to survive. But I was responsible. I took the responsibility of dealing with it. So that was one experience I had. And similar, I mean, there's times where I've had poor relationships as well. Gone out with a person that's not probably been the nicest person on the planet. And, to that end too, I mean, in those relationships, I've taken responsibility for my actions in that. Because sometimes, when you're having an argument, you argue back, is the general thing that you used to do. And now, so I, look at that and go, well, is it all the other person's fault? Well, it wasn't. It's partly my fault too. There's times where I probably could have behaved better. Certainly, when someone's arguing with you, the easiest way to not have an argument is not argue. So now, in those circumstances, I don't have those arguments because if worst case scenario, I'll walk away. It's not worth that, the trauma that can come with that. So they're examples from my perspective, of choosing, being responsible for my actions. Like now, I look at it and go, well, certainly the relationship example, I take responsibility for entering in a relationship that wasn't great for me. That's my choice. What I did from that was clarify what it was that I didn't like about that, because there's certain personality traits that some people have. And when I would meet someone, I would identify that and go, okay, not even bothering getting to know this person better from the context of having a relationship, because they're not behaviors I want in a partner. And I just, again, walk away. I'm not trying to convince them to be another person. They're not right. And, as a result of that, like from friends and those kind of things, I have a lot more quality people in my life that align with who I am because of the approach I've taken, that I'm responsible for my own actions. I can walk away from people that aren't great for me. So that's responsibility. You are responsible for your own actions. The next principle is strength. Find and use your source of strength. And The quote that I've got for this is, "Faith is seeing light with your heart when all your eyes see is darkness," and that's by Barbara Johnson. And the whole purpose of this principle is, in the darkest hours, where do you turn for light? Now, this could be, it could be a god, a deity, um, religion, spirituality. It can be music. It could be poetry. I know people that use art as their source of strength. It could be nature, so it could be going out into going for a walk. Sometimes, and that's often referenced as, I know I've done that where I've been feeling down or feeling like something's overbearing. Going for a walk can be quite empowering. Um, it could be the universe. So you might believe in energy in the universe and draw on that. There's ways, and people can do that. And it could be just love itself. One way of getting strength is to help others. Whenever you feel, it's the irony of that is, whenever you feel like you need strength, go and help someone else. All of a sudden, you feel really empowered. It's quite amazing how that works. But really, what you're doing is you're building a go-to safety net that when you need it, you have that to draw on for strength. And one of the where how this regularly happens in my life now is via music. Um, there's an organization called Two Steps from Hell, and they write soundtracks for movies, and well, they started writing for, I think, TV ads, and now they do a lot of the epic type movies, and they have this. I think there's a type of music now called epic music, and it's really empowering to listen to. It's really uplifting. And so that's music that I regularly listen to from Two Steps from Hell. And another routine that we go through as well, my son and I, whenever I'm taking him to school and we get in the car, he listens, and we have a routine. We'll play the Wonder Woman soundtrack usually a couple of times, or one of the key songs from that, which is really powerful. The King Arthur theme then follows that. And then there's a couple of theme songs from some of the video games he plays. And we go through that routine, but in the morning, so as we get in the car, it's the same routine, but that's really empowering and gives us strength to start the day in the right way. So that's our source of strength. So that's how music, from my perspective, helps me a lot. But there are so many different options as to how you can find that source of strength. The next principle is knowing yourself. Know yourself. You attract the right things when you have a sense of who you are. And that's from Amy Poehler. So who are you and what do you want? And what do you choose? Focus on what it is you like about yourself and what you love in life. This is really important. Liking yourself is because you are a unique person. You have so much amazing talent and ability. This is where it's really important to understand how your brain works, and particularly your reticular activating system, your RAS. Your RAS filters what you are aware of. So if you have set your RAS to focus on what you're not good at, that's what you're going to notice, and you're going to keep reminding yourself of that. And it's not going to be a great feeling. And this is where it's important to like yourself. Think beyond, separate who you are from your behaviors. We mess up at times. We're human. We have that condition where we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Just because you made a mistake, just because you weren't aware of something, you might have treated someone really badly, and you didn't. That's because of how I remember. And this is really terrible, but it was like, how I grew up. How I was taught. I remember this was a long time ago, and I was at a wedding, and I was helping things get organized. We're at the church, and there was where the bride's car was to pull up and park. Well, there was an empty car space in front of the church, so quite a long space. And someone's pulled up and parked there and get out and walk into the church. And I've walked out and gone, "What the hell are you doing there? Why are you parking there? The bride's got to park there." These people didn't know that. And, but that's how I understood to deal with that kind of frustration at that time. It was like, tell them off. What the hell are they doing? Why are they doing that? That's what I grew up with. That's what I knew. And now, so I look at that and go, well, like myself, well, I'm a good person. My behavior back then wasn't great, but it was what I knew how to do at that point in time. Now when I look at it, it'd be very, very different in how I react. And so this is where it's important to separate who you are from the behavior. Now, my intention was good. I wanted the bride to have her priority spot. That was my intention. How I went about it wasn't great, but that was my behavior. And this is where it's important to separate you from your behavior. And this is when knowing yourself. First thing is to like you as a person, because you are a good person inside. And it's important to recognize that. And some of your behaviors, maybe they need improvement, but that doesn't mean that you are a bad person. And so this is where knowing yourself is really important. Knowing inside you, is this amazing person? Knowing some of your behaviors, maybe they need, like I said, my behavior at that church on that day could have been a little bit better. And certainly, from that, I've learned from that. And in most cases now, I think, well, certainly if those similar situations happen, I react very differently. And that's why paying attention, knowing who you are, because it helps you move forward. And this is where you want to, when you know who you are, it gives you a purpose. And that doesn't mean you know your life's purpose either. There's a lot of times throughout my life, I didn't know what I was wanted to do, but in that moment, I wanted to do whatever it was. Was that my life's purpose? No, but I was doing it with gusto. So it gives you, knowing who you are, what you like to do. Whether it's, your lifelong thing, you don't have to know, You might not have a long life. You might have a very long life. You don't know. All you've got is now. But whatever it is, knowing who you are and what you want is really important. And there's a whole thing too about, people go about finding out what you want and you've got to go on this journey. I think, you don't have to make that overly complicated. Trust what is easy in a lot of cases. I loved one of our podcasts, J.D. Schramm. He talked about his husband, who says to him all the time, the right doors open easily, and in any given moment, whatever it is you need to do, and whatever is right for you will be relatively easy. It's only when you fight against who you are that things become difficult. Well, that's my experience anyway. Understanding, knowing yourself, you know what your strengths and weaknesses are, you know what your passions and fears are, and you know what your securities and insecurities are. And again, this doesn't have to be this big in-depth searching. Just listen to yourself, notice, there's certain things you like and don't like. If you calm yourself and just relax and listen to yourself, notice what's going on. When I was younger, I used to love watching horror movies, those slash 'em type things, and that was fun, and that was what I liked at that point in time. Now, not so much. It just doesn't interest me, and I trust in that, so I don't watch those kind of movies. And it's a simple analogy, but I know if I was putting something on like that, I'd feel and go, that's not right, and I'd just turn it off. Well, I don't even go there now because I know I don't like that kind of stuff. On the contrast, there's the series Ash versus Evil Dead, which I find hilarious. So it's a kind of, and I enjoy watching it. It's I have this thing for toilet humor. I like that. I just think it's funny. And so the Ash versus Evil Dead series is it's so ridiculous that I find it funny. And I know that about myself. But same token, knowing your strengths and weaknesses. I mean, if you want to be, I know I mentioned before about, responding with anger to things. I mean, that's something that I did a long time ago. Today doesn't happen. I recognize that's not something that I wanted in my life. I trusted in that, and I took action to do it differently. And it wasn't hard action. It was just like I want to respond differently, and I did. Just take a breath, calm. Do I need to be upset? No, I don't. But that's personal change. That's what it is what we're talking about here with this principle is knowing yourself and knowing how you're reacting. And that doesn't mean what you're doing is wrong. It just might be just what you've done to now. And now you recognize, okay, I want something different. So um, that's, from that perspective, principle number 3 is know yourself. The next principle is relationships. Commit to strong, healthy, and inspiring actions. And I've got it home here as well. And so the quote I've got here is, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And that's from Mother Teresa. And that comes back to a number of different educators, but fundamental principles as well. Uh, Jordan Peterson talks about it from the perspective of get your house in order before going out, and the principle behind that is, if you can't organize yourself, how can you organize others? And that makes a lot of sense. Warren Buffett talks about it from the perspective of do the small things right. Because if you can't do the small things right, how can you do the big things right? And this is where it's important to commit to strong, healthy, and inspiring actions. Because if you can do that just on a daily basis in what you do, that's going to filter through to the other areas of your life. And this commitment to the strong, healthy, and inspiring actions, it gives you great rewards. That's one of the reasons for doing it. Because when you act that way, there's a cause and effect here. If you act in a way that, and I mentioned before, I mean, like with the wedding incident I talked about, um, you know, my actions there by reacting with anger, I mean, that obviously upset not only the guy that was walking in, but his girlfriend with him as well, that they were upset. So that creates that. But if I had reacted in a different way, and similar sort of thing too. Like a lot of times, in a personal relationship, you have arguments because you're not listening. Basically, I look at a lot of arguments that I've had in relationships in the past. A lot of them wouldn't have happened if I just listened to ask questions. One of the easiest ways to avoid a question is to shut up. You can't argue with someone who's not arguing with you. But the other thing is to understand their point of view. Ask questions, especially in a couple, in a romantic relationship. I mean, wouldn't you want to understand what the person, obviously, well, let's assume you've got a happy, not happy, well, let's not say happy, let's assume that you've got a reasonable relationship in the sense that you both care about each other. So this underlying principle, you both care about each other. So if someone's upset, we take the approach that, there's a good intention here that they want to have a continuing relationship. So if they're upset about something, it's not that they don't want to be together. There's something in the way of you connecting. And this is where we're talking about getting great rewards. You commit to strong, healthy, and inspiring actions. Well, if one person's upset, if you take the initiative and say, okay, what is it? Tell me about it. I'm here to listen. And really listen. Where a lot of problems occur is we're not listening. And ask questions, clarify. And then from there you can work it out. But if you're arguing, it makes it difficult to, if you're getting defensive and defending your position, well, you can never learn anything when you're defending a position because you're not taking anything in. You're not learning. You're just saying, I don't agree, and this is my position. That doesn't resolve any conflict. And this is where we're talking about commit to strong, healthy, and inspiring actions. A lot of these things are pretty simple and center around listening. Um, and it does create, what I've got here, creates a solid framework to be successful. Again, these type of actions become habits and make life a lot easier. So you're giving yourself a framework to succeed, and also to, it reminds you of what's important. Now, a lot of the times, certainly if we're talking about having a disagreement about something, it's not the most important thing to do with you in your home. Might be your relationship with your partner or with your children or whatever. That particular issue is not the most important thing. And so by committing to strong, healthy, and inspiring actions, and we've got a whole bunch of more information on this, it's you're taking the approach of, okay, what's really important is the relationship between us. It's important that we have a strong, healthy, and inspiring relationship. So these actions now I'm going to do will give more opportunity for that to happen. The next principle, now this principle is not for all relationships. This is one for couples, and it's intimacy. And it's for couples to have a fulfilling sex life. And the quote is, "Sex without love is as hollow and ridiculous as love without sex." And this is Hunter S. Thompson who said that. Now, in a couple, obviously I'm not advocating this for work relationships and friendships and stuff like that. This is purely for couples. But sex connects people in a way unlike any other. There's a whole level, and we won't get into a lot of detail here. There's a whole bunch of other information that we've got about this, but it's a union that transcends both physical and emotional. It's quite amazing, and there's biological reasons why we do that. Obviously, survival of the species. You have triggers, and we'll talk about it in a second. The other thing is it requires a vulnerability of you both. For both people to be vulnerable, to truly experience that. And again, lots of literature on that. You can look that up, or look at other things that we've got, and we deal with that more specifically. But it becomes really amazing when you're both vulnerable to each other through that experience. And then, there's huge amounts of research that show that it's good for your emotional and physical health and well-being. There's a massive amount of it helps you sleep better, makes you look younger, all sorts of things that are better for your health from having a good and fulfilling sex life. And for a couple too, it's something that only you two share. It's between you two, the two of you. And that's where it's really something special between you, because only you two share, and whatever it is you do together, each to their own. But it's something that you share, and most of all, it's fun. But I'm going to put this on like for a male-female relationship, or masculine-feminine. Let's put it that way. For the same-sex relationships, but there's generally masculine and feminine, and the stereotypical thing is over time, relationships are the sex dies and is not as good, or doesn't happen very often, that kind of thing. And there's also the stereotypical thing that the men want sex more than women, and I challenge that. I don't believe that's correct. There's a biological need in both, and if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, sex is up there with oxygen and food as a need for both. The difference being is the stimulant to make it happen, or stimulus, I should say. See, for women, or the feminine, whichever way you want to look at it in the relationship, but let's take the stereotypical women, is that women don't like sex as much as men. Women have different triggers than men. And this is where it's really important, and we'll deal with this different in other topics in more detail, but one, certainly for men, especially young boys, don't be watching porn for advice as to what women like, because generally they don't. Not what's in it. Porn is designed for men to look at as to what they like, not for what women like. For a guy, you really need to understand that for most women, foreplay is a 24-hour thing, and it's not hard either. This is, I always find it interesting when people talk about not having good sex or not getting sex. It's like, well, what do you do? Especially when guys say that. And I probe a little bit more. It's like, well, when was the last time you said you appreciated it? When was the last time you sent a message saying, "Hey, babe, I love you," or whatever pet names you have for each other? When was you did, like, as you're going past your partner, just softly kissed her on the neck and then walked away? Those are the little things that excite women. They want to feel appreciated. And when they feel appreciated, that you love them, and it doesn't take, if you look at all the effort you put into your football team and stuff like that, it doesn't take that much effort for your woman or female partner, or feminine partner, using that terminology, to feel appreciated. It really doesn't take that much effort. And if they feel appreciated, generally, and this is generally how it works, so we're talking stereotypical here, so it doesn't fit, interpolate for yourself, but generally, the masculine is more of the taker in the relationship, and the feminine is more of the giver. So from the man side of things, the masculine side of things, if you give that little bit, the giver in the relationship is going to respond and want to connect with you. And then there's a whole other thing to do with that, and we get into the whole science of how this works, is certainly when, well, firstly, you want to make sure that your partner enjoys it, as in, let it finish, get to the end. The amount of, know one lady in particular, she had been married for 20 years, never had an orgasm. And she was saying that she wasn't that interested in sex. And it was like, okay. And she'd never had an orgasm. And I'm going, well, I understand why you're not that interested. Then she had an orgasm, her whole perspective changed. It's like, it was just chalk and cheese. So any wonder, her husband for 20 years was struggling to get sex. Well, he just did his thing and left her not enjoying it. So firstly, make sure she enjoys herself. And two, there's a whole aspect of chemical release within the body. So when you get to that point, again, it takes a little bit longer for women to get excited, and it takes longer for them to come down as well. And this is where this is really critical for guys, or masculine. Well, guy, because this is a male-female thing, because women chemically, when they are connected, produce oxytocin. So especially when they orgasm, they produce a lot of oxytocin, which is a bonding chemical. It's a bonding chemical. It's designed to create that connection. The other one where that produces a lot is to do with childbirth and connection to the baby. It's designed. We are biologically designed that way for a purpose. So this is, from a guy perspective, the last thing you want to be doing is when you both finish, is you roll over and leave her. Because she's got all this bonding chemical and you're not validating it. And she's like going, whoa. And you don't, again, this is not a big effort thing. All you have to do is just hold her. You can fall asleep and be holding her. Personal experience. Had that. Fallen asleep. She just, in the sense of snoozed. And I've looked up and she's looking at me. I still had my arms around her. And she was just really happy. And she goes, oh, I'm just enjoying looking at you. And I was like, and I wasn't doing anything. So this is what I'm getting at. This is from the guy side of things, or the masculine side of things. You just need to validate what's important for them. So there's a lot more on that, and we've covered that in other podcasts and other discussions. But it's really important to the sex life between a couple is really important. If you make that work, it's amazing. And not only that, it gets better. In the long-term relationships I've been in, the sex life gets better as you stay together long, because you learn what you each like, and what works for you and what excites you. But also too, as that bond becomes closer, it gets more explosive in the sense of a good way. So that's why intimacy, for couples to have a fulfilling sex life, is a principle for strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. But that's the couple part of that. So that's the one that really applies to a couple only. The rest apply to pretty much all relationships. The next principle is addictions. Control unhealthy habits. One person may be addicted, but the whole home suffers. And I'm not sure who that quote was from. But the addictions weaken your belief in your ability to have control over yourself. And this is where it's really important to control these unhealthy habits. And they're habits. And I'll talk about that in a lot more detail from the perspective about how separating the behavior from the belief, from the behavior from the person. I'm very cautious, and I know there's certainly a lot of organizations out there that will talk about and go, I'm this and I'm that. And I think so I'm cautious about those kind of statements, yes. And I think about it from my perspective. When I was younger, I certainly drank a lot. I drank a hell of a lot. There's times I was drinking 2 bottles of vodka a day, plus some Sambuca on top of that. It was quite a lot. And it was to the point where it really didn't affect me. So like I could drink it, I wasn't drunk. Well, I didn't feel drunk. And probably, obviously if I had been breath tested, I would have, been way over the limit. But from my ability to do things, I was always, it was kind of like my body had got used to it. But the thing was, I never saw myself as a person that had an alcohol problem. And you go, well, you're drinking 2 bottles of vodka a day, that's bad. Well, yeah, it is. But I could always stop because I didn't see myself as that. I saw that as a behavior I was doing. That comes back to, taking responsibility for your actions. I could always stop, and I did. It was similar with smoking. I smoking. It was like the first time I smoked, I think it was 15. And it was because a girl that I liked smoked. So, wanted to be, make the connection, a cigarette. Um, and with smoking, I've always, I've smoked on and off throughout my life until, in the last years when I don't smoke at all. But I shouldn't say last years like it's the last years of my life, because I don't think I'm anywhere close to the end of my life. But certainly in the last 10-ish years, smoking is not something that I've really done. Occasionally I used to do, but now I don't. But smoking was always something that, again, it wasn't who I was. It wasn't I'm a smoker. And then, I just say I choose to be healthy. I choose to breathe clean air was the switch. And that's where thinking, saying, I don't want to be a smoker. You're coming back to your reticular activating system. You're focusing on the outcome, which is smoking. That's why a lot of people find that hard to quit. But if you focus on what it is that you want to be healthy, and that's one of the ways we can switch addictions really quickly, is to separate who you are from the behavior. So you're not. In my case, I approached it that I wasn't an alcoholic. I just drank a lot, and I chose not to. Same token, I wasn't a smoker. I smoked. That was my behavior. And it would instantly go, I don't want to smoke anymore. And I'd stop. And then later in life, it became finding the right motive. Well, it wasn't finding, it was just as it was. I didn't want to be smoking, as an example for my son. It's like I didn't want him to, there was a couple of times when he was younger and I was smoking, and whenever he come around, I hid it. So he never saw me smoke that I'm aware of. And then I just stopped, because I didn't want him to see that. It's like, no, I'm going to deal with whatever I've got to deal, because usually when it's smoking, it's to deal with something. When for me, it was at those times I was having a bit of a stress about something, and I'd have a smoke to change my state. So now I do other things to change my state. So that's part of. So from my perspective, I really think this whole thing of changing addictions is hard. I think that whole philosophy personally comes from, it's easier to sell things when you talk about problems. You sympathize with people's problems and they connect to you more because people want to let out their problems. And that in sales, as a sales tool, we use that all the time. You always sell the problem, and because people will connect to that more, they'll feel that more, and so this whole process of solving addictions being hard, it can be, acknowledge that, but it doesn't have to be. And that's where, but the main thing, the reason for having addictions in here and controlling unhealthy habits is because it doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. And that's where it's really important. One of the other principles is money control finance. And the goal isn't having money. The goal is to live life on your terms, by Chris Brogan. Yeah. And they say, they talk about, you have the other quote of money doesn't buy happiness, and that's true, and neither does poverty. So, happiness is nothing. They're not correlated. But what money does is it certainly provides opportunity. I've been very fortunate to be able to travel to lots of places around the world, which has provided not only for me, but for the children to have all these different experiences, so they have a broader aspect of what the planet is like, because we live on the planet. They experience all these different things. Money does that. Having the money to be able to support your life comfortably and having extra to help other people, that's tremendous. I mean, how many times have you been in a situation where you would have liked to help somebody else, but you couldn't because your finances didn't allow it? So that's where, from money, it it's an opportunity to do things. It's not a source of happiness, but certainly, some toys and fun things that you can buy are a lot of fun when you've got the money to do that. But the reason for having money as a principle is, one, is it does remove, in a relationship, in a personal home relationship, it removes a key source of conflict. So if you are comfortable financially, um, then that's one point you're not really going to have to argue about. You're not going to be stressed about where you're going to live. If you have your own home that is your home and you get to live in it, and you're not worried about where you might live, that provides a source of comfort. You can also, one of the reasons, you can give your loved ones the standard of living you think they deserve, whatever that might be. And it's different for different people. But having the money to do that enables you to do that. Yeah, and we talked about providing assistance to others, having the money to do that. For those stuck in employment they hate, if you've got sufficient money, you don't have to be there. And, it also, I think, it gives you a bit more confidence to navigate your future, because you have more choice to do things. You can, if at that point in time, there's no job that you really like doing, or there's something you don't, there's not things around that you like doing, having, the finances behind you to not be desperate to take whatever job comes your way, that gives you a bit more confidence to navigate your future and go, well, actually, I don't like that. I'm going to wait for the thing that I really want to do. And it certainly opens doors to, give you greater opportunity. Take a, if you're applying for a job, say, and you don't have a lot of money for a nice outfit or something like that, it's harder to present yourself in a way that's going to be better in your life. So money does provide those little things to open doors a bit easier. And you can enjoy the simple pleasures as well. If you, whatever toys it is you like, like fast cars or lots of shoes or whatever it is, you have the ability to have those. And there's no, if whatever it is that you like is okay for you. I have lots of collections that I like because I like them. They're not a representation of my self-worth, but they're fun and I enjoy it. And that's where that's really important. And I think the aspect of that too that I've always found fascinating, and fascinating from the perspective of, even, I haven't done well on this, but the principles behind money are pretty straightforward, of having money. It's, earn more than you spend, so you've got a surplus. I think Mark Twain said, spend a cent more than you earn and you'll end up unhappy. Spend a cent less than you earn and you'll be happy. And you haven't got that pressure. So it is, I've reframed it, rather than spend less than you earn, because I was doing that and that really sucked. I switched it the other way to earn more than I spend. So it was always focusing on having more income than I was going to spend. And that switch in focus has seemed to allow that to happen for me, and be happier about it. But it's basically, the principles of having it is you have a surplus, however you want to frame it. You take that surplus and you invest it. And the income from that investment you reinvest. And at a point in time, compound interest is going to take over, and the return on that investment is going to be more than you can spend in a day or a week or whatever time frame you're looking at, but it's going to be more than your expenses. And then you're financially free. So it's a simple set of instructions. But the reason for controlling finances is, it gives you that long-term stability for your life. So that's why that's a principle. Next is giving. Give back to society. Time and money spent in helping others to do more for themselves is far better than mere giving. Henry Ford. That's interesting, and I love that quote from Henry Ford. Massively, wealthy person, hugely successful, but his focus was not just giving to others, but helping them to do more for themselves. And so it's not just giving. It probably comes back to that. If you're going to put an analogy around that quote, it's taking the approach that you're giving by teaching the person to fish rather than fishing for them. And that's transcending for people. If you're able to help them, and I had that today before I did this podcast. There was a person that I was helping with they had a legal matter, and I was helping them write their affidavit and giving them some clarity around how to write the affidavit. And I'd been helping them for a number of weeks, and they've been learning from that. And then a friend of theirs was in a similar situation. So now they're actually able to go off and help that friend. And that, listening to the person talk about that was transcending for them, because they were able to take that forward. And that's where it's really important, when you're giving, to give in a way that actually helps the people develop, which is really, really important for them. But then it comes back to the whole point of giving as well. I mean, the reason we give is it reminds us that there's more than enough in the world. And there is. And part of that too, one of the things that we do need to understand is we don't live in a zero-sum game anymore. Years ago, there wasn't, to have more, someone had to have less. That's why there was lots and lots of wars, because one faction wanted to be better off. There was limited resources to be better off. You had to take from the other side. Since the Industrial Revolution, innovation has changed that, because innovation has created a bigger pie. When you look at the wealth in the world today, it's grown significantly more than the growth in population. So when you take that comparison. And so this is where, from a giving perspective, it's important to recognize, and that's why we talk about it's in your own selfish best interest to help others. Because by helping others, by helping them grow, you're giving them the ability to contribute the world and make the world a much better place. You could help someone that goes on to be a doctor that finds a cure for cancer that saves your child. And this is where giving is really good, but also too from a personal perspective. I mean, as I mentioned before, when you're having a problem, if you go out and help others, all of a sudden it makes your problem sort of not disappear, but makes you feel better. I know that from my perspective, if ever I'm not, which is not often, but if I'm not feeling well about something or feeling a little bit down, I will immediately turn to who can I help? What can I do? Because that makes me feel better. I think that links to action as well. I think there's scientific research that shows that you can't be depressed and active at the same time. And then by giving to other people, you create within your body a surge of dopamine and not endorphins, probably endorphins. I've forgotten the other word at the moment, mental blank. I have those. For those regular listeners, you'll know. Dopamine, serotonin, that's the one. So dopamine and serotonin, by giving, you produce that in the body. They're feel-good chemicals. You feel good. So that's why it's in your own selfish interest. There's so many different ways. It's in your own selfish best interest to give, because it makes you feel better. So your brain releases all these endorphins. You feel better. It improves their life. Obviously, we talked about that as well. It increases your ability to be liked and create social connections. I mean, when you give to others, most often not, they will like you. So if you're, struggling to meet friends or whatever, don't think about, how can you be more likable? Help others. You're immediately going to be more likable. And you'll create connections as well. Like you go to places and go, how can I help out? all of a sudden you make all these great friends. I've met so many people, as you know, on this podcast, who have become wonderful friends because I've reached out and helped them promote their products and services and things that they're offering. It raises your life expectancy. Now, this is really interesting, and that comes from all those good chemicals you're releasing, the endorphins, the serotonin, the dopamine. All of that improves the quality, your health. So your life expectancy increases. Become more hopeful about the future. That's a really because you see, you're feeling good about things. So you actually help you become hopeful about the future, that there is, things are going to be better off. Yeah, and I think you are more likely to have good things happen to you when you help others. From my perspective, it's amazing the amount of people that have come to my aid and helped me because I've helped other people. And it's not always the same people. I've helped some people. I don't necessarily get, the support back from them, and I'm not looking for it. But what I've found is when I've needed help, it's come from other people because, whether they recognize that I've helped other people or it's attitude or whatever, people will help you if you're helping other people. So that's that principle. The next principle is health. Look after your body. And this quote is from Jim Rohn. It says, "Take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live in." Statement of the obvious, but powerful. Like looking after your body allows you to function the best that you can do. You can live life to a greater fullness. You can connect to others in a much better way if you are healthy. And I won't spend too much time on it because it's fairly obvious, but it doesn't take a lot of effort to be healthy. I remember the first time I got married. This is a lot of people when they get married, they'll because they got wedding photos, they'll trim down and all that. Well, I was actually reasonably large in my first marriage, and the good thing about that is when I had the photos taken, and whenever I was looking back at the photos, I'm always looking. I look better now than I did in my wedding photos for my first wedding, and this is, but what I noticed from that is for a honeymoon, we went off to Switzerland, or we went to a number of different places, but Switzerland was one of the places we went to, and was skiing, and I noticed, because I've been a skier for a long time, but this time I was skiing down the hill and long runs in Switzerland, it was, my legs were burning. Like it was really, it was hard work, really, really hard work, because I had a lot of weight to carry. I was overweight. I think it was about 110 kilos. And anyway, so I then lost weight, which wasn't hard. All I did was I changed my diet. I didn't really exercise that much. I changed my diet. I just didn't eat as much, and I didn't drink as much. I was drinking back then too. I didn't drink as much. I didn't eat as much. It was kind of simple. Like I'd eat stuff till I felt, again, listen to yourself. I felt, I'd had enough. So I just pushed the food away and left it at that because that was my focus. 12 months later, we actually went back to the same place in Switzerland skiing, and I could ski all day. So I hadn't really changed much. I just focused on eating a little bit more sensibly, and I lost a lot of weight just by doing that, and my life was better because of it. Similar sort of thing. I mean, another example of that was I got to a point where I was getting, waking up and sore back, and it was difficult, and to fix that, I just did some core strength exercises to strengthen my back, and I did some stretching, which literally took 10 minutes in a day. So in the morning, I'd get up, I'd do these stretches for 10 minutes. Within a month, all of a sudden, I don't have back pain anymore. It was, and that's, putting a caveat on, this was muscular pain because I was unfit, not, a physical bone issue or way joints was. I'm not saying, that stretching would fix those kind of things. You have to deal with things appropriately. But in a lot of cases where you've got that situation, well, in my case, it was purely because I hadn't looked after myself, and I You were suffering because of it. But then to fix it wasn't really a big issue. It wasn't difficult to get up in the morning and do 10 minutes of exercise. That's not hard. And this wasn't strenuous exercise either. So looking after your body, I mean, it does so many different things. No, not just your body, but looking after your health. So we're talking about your mental health as well. Taking time. I always take time to just have it's not meditation, but I take some time for clarity of thought. So I stop and I do that. So your body is where you live, and mentally and physically taking care of that's going to improve your ability to relate to yourself and relate to other people. Then the last principle we've got here, so this is the 10th one, and I'm not saying that you all have to be in this order either, but certainly personal responsibility, I would always put that as number one, but the others probably can be in a different order. The last one is plan. Have a joint plan for the future. And Michael Hyatt said, most people spend more time planning a 1-week vacation than they do planning their own life. And we're not just talking about your plans here, we're talking about strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. So whether it's a couple you're with, certainly you want to, from your perspective, have your own plans, but then with a relationship, you want to have a plan together. And whether that's in the sense of I meant to blank. You want to have a plan together, and you want to plan together as to where you're going, because then you have this combined sense of purpose that unites you, and you focus individual attention to work together. So we'll get into relationships in different podcasts, but we talk about you are clear in where you're going. Your partner's clear in where they're going, but you have crossover. So some people have relationships where they're very integrated and they do everything together, and that works for them, and that's fine. Other people have relationships where they they're doing their thing, their partner's doing their thing, and they're very different in what they do, and that's fine as well. And they have the ways they connect, but they're very different in how they approach things. And you have people that are of different religions together and very devout in their religion, yet they're able to live together harmoniously. So you find what works for you first, but then when we're talking about a joint plan for the future, you work out, okay, what are we going to do? What works for our life, and you plan that out. One of my friends, his family is they're very wealthy, and they've got 7 children, and I think 13 grandchildren. And I think they do it every second year. They have a board meeting, and they work out, okay, this is what the family is doing. So they've all got their own things they're doing in their own families and stuff like that. But then as a family, they get together and go, okay, this is the bigger plan. And they have a number of places where the family gets together. They book out a resort. Everyone goes there. They've all got their own condos, and they go there for a get together. I know they go skiing together, similar sort of thing. Well, the skiing, they've got their own massive lodge they own, and they all go together as a family, but they plan this out to what they're doing, which is one way of doing it. They do it as a board meeting. Another friend of mine, him and his partner, they do a vision board where at the start of the year they'll draw out as a vision board concept, and I'm not an expert on vision boards, so I can't really describe that process, but they will use a vision board process of planning for their year and what they're going to do together, and then they also have their separate lives. But it's the plan itself is what's important. So they will get together and go, okay, this is what we're doing. So they've got a way of uniting together. They've got a direction. They've got a purpose. And a lot of times that's where relationships will fall over, because, I mean, what's the purpose of being together? If there's no purpose to being together, then why be together? So this is where you can really create a strong relationship by having, you will create a much stronger relationship by having this plan together. It's really important. And I would suggest that pretty much all relationships that fall apart are because there was not because that they didn't have a combined plan. It's pretty hard to not be together if you've got a plan that you're working on together. So they're the 10 principles, and I think hopefully that makes sense, as to why, if you follow those 10 principles, that they're so fundamental to having an easy, happy, and fulfilling life. So just to run through them again: 10 principles. Responsibility. You are responsible for your own actions. Strength. Find your source of strength that you can use when you need to. Yourself. Know yourself. Relationships. Commit to strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. For couples, intimacy. The couples to have a fulfilling sex life. Addictions. Control unhealthy habits. Money. Control finance. Giving. Give back to society. Health. Look after your mind and body. And plan. Have a joint plan for the future.
Thank you for being part of the SHAIR.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes, for others and for you.